Trump hits Britain with tariffs over Greenland. The Prime Minister does nothing.
Has the US president gone mad? Is he bluffing? And crucially, what does it mean for the special relationship?
The Americans in the Cold War had 17 military bases in Greenland and almost 10,000 personnel. They closed 16 of them and they withdrew all but 200 personnel who are left at the one and only base that's left on Greenland. If they wanted to reopen any of those bases or return any of those troops, they can do it. They can do it tomorrow.
Right.
The existing agreement allows them to do that. And by the way, when it comes to mining critical minerals, if they want to do that, Denmark and Greenland will give them the licenses. It's fine. It's fine. So his public reasons simply make no sense because everything he says he wants, he's already got.
Camilla, we were all poised at the press conference for Keir Starmer to do a Hugh Grant.
Yes.
And finally say something meaningful about the special relationship and the pressure it's under following Trump imposing tariffs on those countries that oppose his pledge to take over Greenland.
Retaliate. Oh, no, actually not.
Instead, I wasn't quite sure what the point of the press conference was.
No.
It was classic Keir Starmer, say what you see. He just described the current situation.
I know. You have spoken to this before. Would you like a cup of tea, Keir Starmer? Let me tell you how you make a cup of tea. No. Also, this reiteration of the common man. How does this affect ordinary people? And
Yes.
it's like, well, yeah, we know that is the case further down the line, but what are you actually going to do about this now?
A tariff war isn't in anybody's interests. And therefore, what I want to do is to avoid a tariff war because it will be businesses, workers and families across the country that will be hit by a trade war. And therefore, I will do as I've set out, which is to engage with our European allies, with President Trump. And Chris, in response to the second part of your question, I spoke to President Trump yesterday, as I think you all know, and I'll no doubt speak to him again in coming days. Continually, our offices talk all the time, but we must find a pragmatic, sensible, sustained way through this that avoids some of the consequences that will be very serious for our country. Can I go to Ben Riley-Smith, Telegraph? Ben.
Prime Minister, Donald Trump and his team enter military action in Greenland. Do you think that's a genuine possibility? And secondly, if I may, you are under pressure from some quarters to increase defence spending quicker than you've already planned in the coming years. You yourself are accepting the threat picture is changing almost weekly now. Would you consider increasing defence spending quicker than planned?
Sorry, the very first bit of your first question, I missed the first
action.
Yeah, what's the question though?
Do you think Donald Trump is genuinely considering military action?
Look, I don't actually. I think that this can be resolved and should be resolved through calm discussion, but with the application of the principles and values that I've set out in terms of who decides the future of Greenland.
Let's bring David Blair into the conversation, the Telegraph's chief foreign commentator. Lovely to see you in the studio.
Thank you.
Because Tim raises a good point here, and the most urgent question really is, are you going to have a face-to-face with Trump about this? Because there's a perfect opportunity at your favourite place in the world this week, Davos.
Davos.
Get out there. So my understanding is Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is due to go.
Yes.
The Prime Minister isn't due to go.
Yes.
Weirdly, Nigel Farage is going.
Right. So 9/10 of Keir Starmer's time is spent overseas at summit. The one summit he should go to, and literally everyone else is going to, Keir Starmer has decided to sit out. David, what did you make at the press conference?
He described the problem. He didn't set out what the United Kingdom proposes to do in response. I have a bit of sympathy for him in the sense that there's not actually much that he can do. You know, refraining from taking the option of retaliating with tariffs was, I think, a reasonable decision. That positions the United Kingdom to be the mediator between the EU and the US on this issue. But it would help if he actually took the opportunity to go and see the president face-to-face this week.
Yes.
It seems odd that he's not doing that, although he did, in fairness, speak to Trump yesterday. But the question is, even if all this is resolved, and I think the odds are that it will be in some form, once this is over, is anyone actually going to trust America to come to Europe's defence? Does the Atlantic Alliance actually mean anything now that you have the two components of it, America and Europe, imposing tariffs upon one another in a way that simply hasn't happened before?
Okay, but are we talking here about a loss of trust in America or a loss of trust in Donald Trump? How much of this is just one emperor has gone a bit Caligula, but we expect that when he goes, which is not that long off, 3 years, everything will go back to normal?
That's a vital question. How much of this is down to Trump and how much of it is structural? I think there's quite a lot of structural change happening at the moment.
Right. Explain that. So why are we drifting apart in ways that are not just caused by Donald Trump?
It is a fact that America's geopolitical interests are more and more focused on the Pacific.
Right.
That's due to the economic center of gravity of the world moving to the Pacific, and it's due to the extraordinary challenge posed by China, which is even bigger than the challenge posed by Russia, simply because China's economy is the second biggest in the world. It's only 20 to 30% smaller than America's, whereas Russia's economy, by comparison, is only a bit more than half the size of the United Kingdom's. We have half their population, but almost twice their GDP.
I love how we're always the comparator now for loser nations.
I know. And also, Russia have been spending so much money on defence. It's unreal.
Well, that's right. So they blow huge shares of their small economy on defence. But
I recall America pivoting that way under Obama.
Yeah.
Right? So this has been a long time coming.
It's been a long time coming, and under any American president, they would have to be shifting resources towards the Indo-Pacific.
Right.
Plus, every American president for decades has complained about Europe free riding off America's defense umbrella and underspending on defense. And they've been right. No one seriously questions that now. Trump's achievement, and it's a real achievement, is that he's frightened the Europeans into actually doing something about it. So now you have every European country meeting the 2% target for NATO defense spending. And you have 3 or 4 European countries actually outspending America when it comes to defense as a share of GDP. So Poland, the Baltic states, all spending more than America is now. That huge change has come about because of Trump. But the logic is that means America thinks that it needs to do less in Europe. And we Europeans have to take that position further and become much more accustomed to looking after ourselves.
I know, although I was saying to Tim earlier, there is a contradiction at the heart of complaining about taking the lying share of defence spending and then behaving as if you have more military might than anybody else, precisely because you have taken the lead on defence spending. You can't have it both ways. You can't complain that you're the leader of the free world because of this spending supremacy and then be treating Europe with such contempt in terms of the threats against Greenland. So when you said about the mediator role that we play, is that because Macron's been more aggressive in his response to this and it's seen as if there is a special relationship, then it's for Keir Starmer to play the role of peacemaker because he is perceived to get on better with Trump than anyone else in Europe? I mean, I say that because one would imagine Meloni probably gets on the best with Trump. I don't know. She just isn't powerful enough a figure to try and be a brokering agent.
I think that's right. And it's Britain's traditional role to be the bridge across the Atlantic and to heal these kinds of transatlantic divides. Now, we never had one quite as bitter or as extraordinary as this, and no one would have imagined that it was even possible. But now that it's happened, it is part of the job description of a British Prime Minister more than any other European leader to try and solve this. And I hope that Starmer understands that. I think probably at some level he does.
Does Trump understand that?
Does Trump understand? I think he probably does. I think he probably does. That, if there's any European leader that he wants to deal with and try to settle this with, it will be through Starmer. Of course, he has to deal ultimately with Denmark. But having the British helping, you can see why that might be valuable.
The EU, David, is promising to activate its anti-coercion instrument, also being called a trade bazooka. What on earth is that, and how on earth will that work?
Well, it's never been used before. It was designed for extreme circumstances where a big country was trying to blackmail the EU. And the big country everyone had in mind was China. But instead, for the first time it's been invoked against the United States, which is another indicator of the extraordinary times in which we live. And that gives the EU leverage. But the fact that Britain is not doing anything comparable gives Starmer the opportunity to be a mediator.
It's worth noting again on trade to reinforce this theme of it's not just Trump, that Joe Biden's whole trade policy was made in America, which meant using tax breaks and subsidies to blatantly bribe American companies to move from Europe to the United States. And one wonderful, ironic example of this is the EU pressured America for years to go electric on cars and to go green. And they finally got a president who said, I will do it. And he did it gangbusters. He threw subsidies and tax breaks at American-built electric cars. And suddenly the EU had to pivot towards saying, please don't do that. So when the engine of America turns against you, you really do feel it. But my point is this is the direction America's been moving against free trade, against globalization, towards onshoring for some time. And there are overlaps between Trump's economic populism and the Democratic parties. I don't think we're ever going to get a Democratic president in the future who says, and I will be quite glad for American jobs to go to Europe.
No, of course.
That's not going to happen. In the same way that I doubt we're going to see one who will say in the future, you don't have to spend 2% of GDP. Or we don't have to worry too much about China anymore. This is clearly the direction of travel. And as you have said, China is emerging as the biggest threat. America under Trump has been a little bit irritated by being distracted, in inverted commas, for those who are listening, by Russia and Ukraine. It would really like to focus on Asia. Fine. But what a lot of people are asking is, how does Greenland fit into this? Because it's not in the Pacific. So to explain to us, how does this realignment of America's interests lead to Trump saying, and I want Greenland?
There's 2 points here. The first is Greenland has enormous reserves of critical minerals, which is crucial in America's struggle against China. Actually, not Russia. That's really crucial for the China angle. But the second point, Tim, in all frankness, is Trump's public reasons for why he needs Greenland make no sense at all.
Right.
When he says we need to deploy more troops, we need to do more to protect what he sees as an exposed flank in the Atlantic Alliance, he can do all that anyway. There's an existing agreement, the 1951 defense agreement between America and Denmark, that allows him almost free access to Greenland. So, for example, the Americans in the Cold War had 17 military bases in Greenland and almost 10,000 personnel. They closed 16 of them. And they withdrew all but 200 personnel who are left at the one and only base that's left on Greenland. If they wanted to reopen any of those bases or return any of those troops, they can do it. They can do it tomorrow.
Right.
The existing agreement allows them to do that. And by the way, when it comes to mining critical minerals, if they want to do that, Denmark and Greenland will give them the licenses. It's fine. It's fine. So his public reasons simply make no sense because everything he says he wants, he's already got.
Right. What's he playing at then, David?
I think it's what he wants really is territory. He wants to be able to plant the American flag in the map and say...
Haven't they come off bloody territory?
You would have thought so. You would have thought so.
Massive.
Yes.
It's just insane.
That's right. You would have thought so. And as I discovered the other day, I don't know, you may already know this, 40% of the current territory of the United States was purchased. The Louisiana Purchase, the Alaska Purchase being the most famous ones. So he wants something comparable. That's clearly what it is. There's a possible solution. I wrote about this last week. What you could do is you could convert the existing base and the 16 closed ones into American sovereign territory. So you could make them into sovereign base areas. That's the technical term. Just as, to this day, Britain has sovereign bases in Cyprus. And it works. And if you can make it work in a very small and crowded island like Cyprus, it would be much easier to replicate that kind of thing in a huge and basically empty island like Greenland. And then you would allow him to plant flags in the snow and say that he's gained territory for the United States.
And I suppose if he's empire building, he can claim it's still in line with America first because it's benefiting America's interests.
I would add, this isn't the first time actually America's behaved like this. There's a reason why it has Hawaii, right? That was once an independent territory with a nice monarchy. The Americans just took it. They took the Philippines, they took Cuba. Then they realized they didn't have to run Cuba directly, so they left, but said to the Cubans, you will welcome us back if you operate in any way that contradicts our financial interests. And for 30 years, that was actually written to Cuba's constitution. It actually said in the Cuban constitution, America has the right to invade us.
Really? I didn't know that.
If we meddle with their money. So,
is that right? I didn't know.
So the period in which America didn't behave like this, really, was sort of really post First World War until the present. So there's an argument for saying they're going back to behaving in an imperial way. And of course, it's new empire versus old. There's a reason why Denmark has Greenland. It's basically a colony, or was. I know it's more self-governing now, but there's a case for saying what's happening is not new, it's a reversal to an old order. But there is another motivation that we have to consider, which is that Trump didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes.
He seems to think Norway itself hands over the prize. It's in the gift of the Norway government, because he has written a letter to the Norwegian PM. I'm not even going to bother to pronounce this correctly.
Go on, try.
Jonas Gahr Store.
Nice.
Saying his plan to take over Greenland was motivated by being snubbed for the Nobel Peace Prize. He said, you have to breathe heavily into the microphone. Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus is in capital letters, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. So having been denied the Peace Prize, he's now going for the War Prize instead. Some people have suggested the obvious thing to do is just give him
I know.
a Peace Prize, invent a Peace Prize,
But this is the second...
have it presented to him by a beautiful lady in swimwear.
In a bikini. But this is the second time he has done something extraordinary and outrageous on a result of not getting this bloody Peace Prize. Because, of course, Maduro and this whole assault on Venezuela, because the person replacing Maduro had won the Peace Prize.
That was tragic from her point of view. So the leader of the opposition got the Peace Prize, not Trump. He then, having carried out the coup, said that he wouldn't support her becoming the new leader of Venezuela. So in an obvious bid to change his mind, she has actually handed her prize over to him. But the committee has asserted that you can't do that. Once the prize has gone to you, it is your prize. You cannot just hand it over.
You get the impression that Trump wasn't ever very good at sports day.
He was very good at sports day. He was quite an athletic young man.
What, throwing shot puts and things?
I don't know about that.
If he'd be great in a 100-metre sprint, but who knows?
He went to a military academy. He was pretty trim.
What's with the insecurity about this prize, David? Come on.
But why does he want to be in the club of Nobel Peace Prize winners? I mean,
globalists.
Yeah, well, Yasser Arafat got the Nobel Peace Prize. Do you want to be associated with him?
Henry Kissinger.
Barack Obama got the Nobel Peace.
He got literally nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just
because he was nice.
Yes.
Yeah, Henry Kissinger. When he got the Nobel Peace Prize, parody died. And that was it.
But this is what we're all trying to figure out, is how much of this is just personal vanity and craziness, and even some people whisper dementia, or is what he's saying a reflection of the future travel of the United States? And maybe he's doing it in a crazy way. It's going back to my first question. Maybe he's doing it in a crazy way, but actually this is a new geopolitical reality we all have to deal with.
I think it's a lot more the latter. Now, Greenland is a specifically Trumpian thing. No other American president will be behaving the way he is towards Greenland. But America's weariness with Europe, its impatience with European free riding, and the strategic imperative to focus ever more on the Indo-Pacific is real, and it's got nothing to do with Trump, and any American president will be behaving in much the same way.
Although, when we look at J.D. Vance's behaviour throughout all this, both Venezuela and the Greenland assault, what are we to extrapolate from that? Because he has been notably reticent to voice that much public support for Trump in this. I'm only saying that because he does look like he is set to be the next US president. So what's your analysis of that?
I think Vance is a bit different, because Vance is a convinced isolationist in the way that Trump isn't. Vance has really thought it through, and he really does believe that the United States should avoid foreign entanglements as much as possible. And so for him, I can imagine, he wouldn't see Greenland as being a vital interest for all the reasons that we've just discussed, that he will be very well aware of. For him, he could probably rationalize the Venezuela intervention because America has a special interest in its own hemisphere and its own region. But beyond that, in J.D. Vance's world, America must just stay out.
Mm-hmm. And this is not popular at home.
No.
The American public does not see the link between acting in Venezuela, acting in Greenland, and driving down the cost of living. I think their skepticism is probably quite sensible. It's very interesting that after Venezuela, Trump invited a whole load of oil barons to the White House to say, go ahead, you can invest in Venezuela. And they seem to have said, we don't want to do that. And they don't want to do it because actually, unless you occupy Venezuela, I guess is the implication, and impose a regime change, if we go back there, we might get an oil contract, but then our property will just be stolen again by the next government. Venezuela is too unstable for that kind of heavy investment. So the public and even business cannot see the logic of what Trump is doing. And the right-wing base is very uncomfortable about it too. And J.D. Vance, his path to the Republican nomination is holding on to the Trump more isolationist wing of the party. And I think that's one reason why he's gone a bit quiet during all of this.
So we've talked about the person who might be the next president. Let's talk about the person, before you go, David, who might be the next Prime Minister, Nigel Farage. Farage, first of all, is in a difficult position here as Donald Trump's bestie, because there'll be many reform supporters who think that this assault on Greenland is an aberration. Let's deal with that first and then get onto the issue of whether Farage should be in Davos at all, which seems contrary to his criticisms of the globalists. What he's now becoming one. He's aping one. He's going because he wants to see the Donald. David.
He's going, I imagine, because he wants to present himself as the future Prime Minister of Britain.
Yes.
And he understands that the movers and shakers of the world will be there. And though many of them he happens to despise, he still goes, just as he goes to the House of Commons from time to time, even though it's filled with people he despises. So I can see from his point of view, it makes sense to go. He may even have a word with the Donald in the absence of Keir Starmer. Who knows?
And he can say something publicly like he used to do in the EU, which says, I'm here, but I don't like you.
Yes.
And
yes.
will trend on TikTok or whatever. There's
Yes,
a
I
way
hadn't
of
thought
playing
of
this
that,
to his
yeah.
advantage. I bet he does that, gives a speech saying, you're all out of touch. You don't know what you're doing. Everyone hates you.
Yes, but is his close alliance with Donald Trump now going to be troubling?
Yes, it is. It always was a problem. Reform, one of the things that it staked its credibility on as an emerging movement was, we have access to the people that run America.
Yes.
You don't.
Yes.
I think maybe my first ever front page was the photo of Trump meeting Farage in 2016 at Trump Towers with the gold doors. It looked like a heist movie.
I
I'd just
remember
broken
that.
into a bank.
Weren't they both in caps?
Yes.
And I was in America covering. I didn't do the photo, but I wrote the story. I wrote about it anyway. And so there was that sense of this came out of nowhere. Well, Farage knows him. And ever since then, that's one thing that's kept Farage on the front pages and has kept him relevant in politics, even during fallow moments when Farage wasn't doing so well, was his connection to Trump. But the problem always was that if your political movement is based upon nationalism, well, the national interests of America and Britain will occasionally diverge. So the whole notion of an alliance of nationalists is built on sand. Because at some point, by the very nature of nationalism, there's going to be an argument between you. And what do you do then? And if part of Farage's credibility is built upon, I know the leader of the free world, well, what if the leader of the free world starts behaving like an arse?
Yes.
How do you explain it? And if your voting base is patriotic, they're going to be angry if you're associated or aligned with a man who's behaving in a way that undermines British interests. It's always been a difficult rope for him to walk.
David Blair, thank you very much indeed for joining us on today's Daily Tea.
Thank you.
If you're enjoying our journalism, why not sign up to From the Editor, our free email newsletter? Start your day with the latest news and opinion, plus our bite-sized puzzles. Scan the QR code to sign up free today.